raise of hands, how many people have $0 participants at their events? Who wants to raise 2 hands? And 2 feet, right? How many people here know exactly what percentage of $0 participants they actually have? How many do you have? 48%? How about you? 40, wow, that's like the magic number. Over here, anyone? Yeah. Well, I had a number that could match you before, so 75%. It's actually pretty typical. How many people in the room actually have a plan to address the number of $0 participants that they have? That's why you're here. Well, good. We're excited to be able to share some really great ideas with you. But at the very least, you really need to take stock of how many $0 participants you really have, because you can make a lot of progress by putting a good, solid plan into place. Actually, only 20% of event fundraisers actually fundraise. So everyone in this room that's above that 20%, give yourself a round of applause. And then say, but we can do so much more.
Yeah, and those $0 fundraisers cost all of our organizations money. I think that, we step a little closer to the mic, I think that all of you probably know where that costs your organization money, but it can be in the form of venue, food, water, insurance, porta potties. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Team World Vision and where we're coming from. Our program is a little bit different because we partner with existing events, so we don't have the overhead charge of putting on our own events, but when somebody registers for our team, we send them a welcome kit in the mail. And also when we have people call in our call center, it tends to be the $0 fundraisers that are calling in the most. They tend to be the most needy participants, are the ones who are really contributing the least, and that costs us hours at our call center. It costs our organization money. So we want to talk to you about how to boost those $0 fundraisers and help them feed back into your program.
Perfect, I think. The problem really most likely isn't the participants. The problem really probably lies in us and what we're doing, or more than anything, what we're not doing to get them to fundraise. Most likely we are engaging them at a very high level and talking more at them instead of talking to them. And we're going to talk to you today about some ways that you can really start to engage these participants on a much higher level, so they really feel, the need, the want to be raising money for your organization.
So I'll talk a little bit. I mentioned my name is Betsy, and especially for those who have just come into the room, I work on the experience team at Team World Vision. So I'll start at a higher level. World Vision is a global community development organization. We do a variety of work all around the world, but we focus on the root causes of poverty. So everything that World Vision does is centered around targeting the root causes of poverty. We always say you're going to find World Vision in the most remote areas, the places that other organizations are afraid to go, the places that other organizations can't get to. So that's World Vision. Team World Vision is a fundraising arm of World Vision that encourages and inspires people to run races, to take on personal challenges as a way of fundraising for our cause. So my team specifically, Team World Vision, focuses our efforts around, for the most part, around raising funds for clean water projects. So a lot of those projects are in Africa. They're also in other parts of the world, but a lot of our fundraising is centered around fundraising for clean water, specifically in Africa. And my role on the experience team is to make the end-to-end experience for one of our participants excellent. So anything from the moment that they first sign up, whatever inspires them to sign up, even backing up a step farther, we have a team of reps that reach out to schools, churches, community groups, and that's where we do a lot of our recruiting. So I help provide our reps with tools to recruit. Then the people who are brought into our team, once they're on the team, then I help from an experience perspective, we go through every stage of the process, whether that's emails, whether that's t-shirts, whether that's fundraising tools, whether it's the race day experience. We call ourselves the experience team because it really is the full-fledged experience that we're creating for these participants, and we want it to be the absolute best quality. So I'll talk a little bit more about Team World Vision. Team World Vision, last year in 2017, we had almost 40,000 people cross finish lines for our program across the country. So that is partnering with existing events and building a team to run or walk that existing event and fundraise in the process. So we have teams in a lot of the major cities in the United States. Some of our biggest groups we had about 2,000 people run the Chicago Marathon every year. We have about 1,000 run the LA Marathon. We're growing to almost 1,000 in the Twin Cities in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. Those are probably our largest footprints of Team World Vision. But what's surprising is about 80% of our runners are what we would qualify as non-runners. So these are people, we are not marketing to the people who are subscribed to Runner's World magazine or who follow running blogs or who are part of Nike Running Club. We are targeting people like the two people in this photo who you would look at and you probably wouldn't think that they were avid runners, but they sign up because they're passionate about our cause and because they buy into our vision. And what happens when people do that is it also means that they're terrified. So it's people who have never run a day in their life, they've probably never fundraised a day in their lives, but they sign up because something grabs them about our cause and it's something that they want to be a part of, and it's a way that they can dually make a difference both for themselves and for people on the other side of the world.
My name is, as said earlier, Tracy Earll, and I am the National Walk Director for the National Hemophilia Foundation. And our walk just rebranded in 2018 from the National Hemophilia Walk to Unite for Bleeding Disorders to really represent the culture of the community larger that we serve. And without sounding really negative about the walk program that we had before, I started about 2 years ago, and we really had no culture of fundraising whatsoever. And I know a lot of people say, we had no culture. No, we had zero culture of fundraising in our organization. And the real reason is back in the 80s, when there was the blood crisis and people with hemophilia contracted AIDS or hepatitis because of the tainted blood that they were getting from the pharmaceutical companies, basically the pharmaceutical companies had so much guilt and so many lawsuits over everything that happened that they were just throwing money at our community. And when I say throwing money, if you signed a grant, sent a grant proposal in for $20,000, likely they were sending you 50 at the chapter level. So our chapters needed to know how to do zero fundraising whatsoever. The only thing they needed to know how to do is write a grant application. And many of them got really good at that. But they left their fundraising events up to, whoever showed up. If a team showed up one year and raised $10,000, likely that team didn't even get a phone call inviting them back the next year because whether they came or not, it didn't really matter. So we really had zero culture of fundraising at our organization. And we struggled when I first came in just about 2 years ago to really engage these people. We had no tracking of our retention rate. We couldn't get them back. We really weren't paying attention to whether or not they were fundraising or not. If they came to our event, they got free t-shirts, they got free food, they got, more swag than they could possibly, need or want. And so it was really all about, well, I have nothing else to do today. I'll go out to the hemophilia walk and see what I can come home with. And unfortunately, with the changing times of everything, our chapter started to see a real turn in the last couple years, and the pharmaceutical organizations were not writing checks as fluidly as they were before, and in fact, just in 2018, made a clear declaration that they would not be funding any fundraisers at all. So all of a sudden, we had to do a 100, full 180 flip. To be able to teach these chapters how to raise some money, or they actually quite possibly would not have their doors open in another year. So we were really starting from scratch completely.
So I think that we both, and Tracy and I, talking about this presentation, one thing that we kept coming back to is really fundraising culture. And that's one thing that we'll talk about a lot today, is just making the experience personal for participants and also just culture as a whole. So our activation rates as programs are 72% for Team World Vision and 39% for the National Hemophilia Foundation. We're going to talk a little bit about how and why we both got to those numbers. So I'll focus on Team World Vision first. So as I mentioned, we have races from a 6K, which is, the reason we chose 6K is because the average distance that someone walks to fetch water in the developing world is about 6 kilometers. So we have a race series that we actually put on as World Vision called the 6K for Water, and that's the most approachable sort of entry-level race that we have. But really, that's probably at the lower end where our true bread and butter comes in the form of half marathons and full marathons. And then we have a team that climbs Mount Kilimanjaro. So what we've found is that the higher the challenge, the higher the fundraising happens. So the sweet spot, not everybody can take the time or energy to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And so the sweet spot we found to be half marathons and full marathons. So for most people, as I mentioned, on our team, they are new to running. And so this comes with a lot of fear. So our program has this intense fear factor. So a huge part of what we believe $0 fundraisers come out of is because they're scared. So one thing that we do is we help try to eliminate that fear, and a huge part of that is around the culture of our team. So throughout each city where we have a team, we usually have both a Team World Vision employee, a staff member that is going to be the leader in that city, but then we have volunteer captains in that city as well. And we have group runs where for whatever race they're training for, we have a huge culture around group runs. And what group runs do is they help eliminate fear of training and fear of fundraising, because when you're out on the run, you end up talking about your fundraising goal and how you're doing and ideas and ways that work and ways that don't work, and how it sucks when you ask somebody to donate and they say no, and how, so they talk about both the fears of fundraising and training. But also at the beginning of our group runs, our leaders and our team captains talk about fundraising and talk about what it means that you're not just asking people for money, you're inviting them in to change the world with you. And that's what we always say, is you're not asking people for $50 donation, you're not asking them for a $100 donation, you're asking them and inviting them to join you in changing the world. And so that's part of our language, it's part of our culture. And those group runs really become a huge part of our culture, where each city has its own little flavor, and that can mean literal flavor. That, you know, there's some group runs that their post-run snack is cereal, a cereal bar. In some cities, it's a pizza bar. In some, it's Oreos. And as you can see, the theme, it's not like we're a super healthy team of runners and health nuts. It's a lot of people who love what they love, and they love their Oreos, and they go out and they give it their all on these group runs, and then they want to eat what they want to eat afterwards. So there becomes kind of a fun culture around the spirit of training and the spirit of fundraising. Another way that we help eliminate the $0 fundraisers is we add meaning and we make it repeatable. So whenever we're talking about fundraising, we talk about lives, not dollars. So we've established through World Vision, I know that not every organization can do this as specifically, but we have, they've able to calculate the number that $50 provides clean water to one person. So we always make sure in every messaging we send out that we drive that point home, that for somebody that's fundraising with us, $50 provides clean water to one person. So when someone runs a full marathon, we ask them to raise $1,310, and that's $50 per mile for 26 miles. So that's an easy way of repeating to people that they are asking to support them, is will you support me for mile 10? Will you support me for mile 20? So for the 26.2 miles, that comes out to $50 a mile. So we always try to drive that point home. So especially when our fundraisers go out and ask their friends and family to support them, they can ask for support in increments of $50. So further, when we're talking about incentives, I know a lot of programs, and we used to do this too, give people a t-shirt when they sign up to join the team. And we decided to change the way we do that and ask people to earn their gear, not just because it saves us, but because it creates a culture, it adds to the culture of fundraising. And each of these incentive items have a special name, a special meaning. So our t-shirt is our champion t-shirt. Our run hoodie, our hero medal is not just any medal, but by earning the hero medal, you've changed the lives of 60 people. And we even have a special way of giving people the hero medal. I meant to bring one today. But when someone comes into our finish line tent after completing their race, we actually have a human being put the medal around their neck and say, the medal that you just earned crossing that finish line is really important. It took months of training. It took months of working really hard and sweating and crying and bleeding, and we know that that was really difficult, and it's amazing what you just achieved. But this medal is even more important because in this medal, you just provided 60 people with life-changing clean water, and this is the most important medal that you're going to receive all day. So we give them this face-to-face moment, telling them and thanking them for the impact and the difference that they're making. And we let them know that all the steps you took today are steps that you're going to actually take away from someone that has to currently walk to fetch clean water, or to fetch what's probably dirty water, and we'll then give them access to clean water, hopefully within the next year. So that's just an example of how we add value to our incentives. The third thing is that we model what we want our participants to do. So for me, this is in no way bragging, and you'll see that once I talk about this guy, but I have been on the team for 3 years. I've ran 4 races with Team World Vision, and I've fundraised about $15,000 for them just because I believe in what we're doing. I believe in World Vision's work. But this guy, this is Steve Spear, and he decided to run across the country for clean water. So he started in LA. He ended in New York. It took him about 2.5 months, and he raised $500,000, providing 10,000 people with clean water in the process. And he did it not because somebody asked him to do it. He did it because he truly believed in the work that we're doing. So I think that has to do with both hiring the right people, but it also has to do with just inspiring your team, making sure that your team understands the amazing work that your organization is doing. And it has to do with finding whatever gets under your team, like it inspires them and helps them believe and buy into the vision of your organization. So it's hard to ask individual fundraisers and participants to do what you're not already doing. So we think that's a really important part of our program that's not required. You know, when you come to work for Team World Vision, we don't say you have to raise this much money for our cause, but it's just become a part of our team culture. Another thing in this, there's 2 more. This one is really simple. You need to ask them to raise more. And this was sort of an epiphany moment that we had a couple years ago, that if you want people to raise more money, then you have to ask them to. They're not going to do it unless you ask them to. So sometimes we have people who set a fundraising goal at the beginning of their training season. We don't have any sort of system where we charge people if they don't fundraise. So they can set whatever goal. Some people set a $5,000 goal, some people set a $10,000 goal, but like I said, the minimum goal that they can set is $1,310. And so sometimes when they reach their goal, we'll send them an automated message that's encouraging them to go to the next level, to provide more people with clean water if they reach their goal before the event. So there's always that level up attitude and inviting more people into life change and trying to change. They're working hard in their training, so we try to get them to realize, make the most of your training and try to change as many lives as possible while you're at it. So just ask them to, because if you don't ask them to, they probably won't. And then the last thing is, as I mentioned, with automated communications, the schedule notifications, that we use through DonorDrive are one of the most powerful tools that we have. And that's because the unique thing about a marathon or a half marathon is that each week is different. So what we did in mapping out our schedule notifications is we took our training plans, which tend to be about 18 weeks, and we broke those down into an 18-week communications plan. So we tried to study what a runner is feeling each week, and when they might be likely to run into injury, when they might be starting to wonder about what they should be eating while they're training, when they're probably running into difficulty and lots of people saying no to their fundraising asks. So we try to mimic what people are feeling throughout their season, and we try to imitate and to feed into those fears and those difficulties and those challenges in the communications that we're sending them. So we send an email each week throughout those 18 weeks, and the ones that get the most opens are the ones at the very beginning. So we try to pack the most into those emails to provide them with lots of tools, with lots of resources, with lots of excitement and inspiration in those early emails, because once they get hooked, then the people who open early and who click early are the ones who usually continue to open and click. Our other highest open rate is the I forgot my password email. So we always talk about how we need to just insert other things into that email. What else can we include in the I forgot my password email? Because that has probably 99% open rate. So we always joke about that. But now I'm going to hand it off to Tracy to talk more about her program.
Thanks, Betsy. So, like I said to you, we had started out really struggling with a fundraising culture and getting people to actually come out to our events and raise any money. And in 2017, we made it our goal to increase that. So everything that we built into our program in 2017 revolved around what we could do to get more people at our events actually raising money. And so we set a goal, which I thought was going to be pretty lofty, to go from 31% to 35%. I went so far as to put it in my goals that I set in front of the CEO of our organization and say, by golly, this is not going to be easy, but I think we can do it. And it was really that decision that helped drive every dollar we spent throughout the year. And I was super happy at the end of the year to report that we not only went from 31 to 35%, we actually were able to go from 31 to 39% activation rate. So flip that around, that means that in the past we had 60, I'm bad at math, the opposite way, 69% of people who were coming out to our events and not raising money, and we were able to get that down to only 61% of our people. Still not where we want to be. I think in the walk space, it tends to be closer to that 50 to 60%. So obviously we have a long way to go. But we did that at the same time, increasing our participation nationwide by over 31%. So not only were we getting participants who had been out at our walks for the past 5 years or so raising money, who had never raised money before, we are also getting the 30% new participants to raise money in their first year. And we know that participants who come back the next year raise double the amount of money. So we're really hoping that the amount of activation we were able to have this year will kind of show in the amount of revenue that we have overall next year. How do we do it? The first is we had to do some really intensive training with our chapters. We had to work really closely with them and help them understand the way the relationship works. You can't not talk to a participant, from 2 weeks after the event when you finally sent out the final numbers to about 8 weeks before the event and think they're going to come back and do what you need them to do. It really was about teaching them about the relationship that they needed to build with our participants throughout the year. I think it was said in the opening session that our participants want to be our friends. They want to hear from us. So we need to make sure that we're building out a plan throughout the year that we're communicating back to them with what we did with the money that they helped us raise. The second is mission messaging, and I think, Betsy talked a lot about that, but it's very important. It was very successful for us as well. We hold camps for our kids. We teach them to come out, how to self-infuse themselves. It's kind of like a life-turning moment when all of a sudden they don't have to sit with mom and dad to have their factor infused. They're able to do it themselves. And it usually happens somewhere between 7 years old and 10 years old. But what that really happens is at the weekly camps that they go to once a year throughout the year. It costs about $875 in some of our chapters, up to $1,500 a week to have a kid be able to attend camp. But obviously that camp is life-changing. So we really talked to our participants about, it costs $875 for a kid to come to camp. Last year we went from 87 kids at camp to 119 kids at camp. We need your help in making this happen. Same thing, we do a lot of emergency assistance. Our drugs are very, very expensive. It costs each one of our people affected about $300,000 to $1 million a year for their meds to just stay alive. And obviously insurance helps with a lot of that, but it does not help with everything. So we do a lot in emergency assistance for our community. And we've had, opportunity or instances where chapters actually ran out of emergency assistance funds like halfway through the year of what they had budgeted for. So we really were able to turn some of that communications into our emergency assistance fund is drained for the year. We need your help building that back up so that no family has to go without their meds the rest of the year. So really using your mission to sell people, to engage people, and to really bring them, into, feeling like they're more a part of something and that they're doing something very special, instead of saying, help us by help us raise money because we'll be able to do more research or do more advocacy, that kind of thing. It's really kind of putting a face to what you're trying to do. And the third is turnkey outreach. And after I thought about this, after I wrote this, I don't necessarily mean turnkey, the recognition program, but we do use that. But what I mean by turnkey outreach is really, we did a lot of providing materials, not only for our chapters, for them to use, but also materials for our chapters to share with participants for them to use. So what I mean by that is, we actually didn't have a really hard time of getting our team captains to fundraise. Our team captains fundraise at about an 87%. Really great. Can't complain about it at all. I would pat myself on the back for that. What we do suck at is getting the people under them to fundraise. So it wasn't all about what we had to do to talk to our team captains. It was all about what we had to do to get our team captains to talk to their participants. And so we built a lot of materials out that were directed directly at the team captain for them to share. So we wrote emails for them to send out. It's kind of like we wrote an email to put in an email, for them, the new person to email. So we actually wrote messages, wrote social media messages, everything that they could just cut and paste that said, you signed up on my team, thank you everyone for signing up on my team. This is what we want to do, so it was materials for the team captains to use to engage their participants at a higher level. So instead of kind of putting that all in their lap, we just really built everything out for them and made it as easy as possible to get that out. You'll see in the corner the Christmas card. We went so far as to print Christmas cards for our chapters and send them out to them, and a list of their team captains and their addresses, so they didn't even have to actually go in the system and do anything. But we said, you need to communicate with them, you need to do. So anything we could do to kind of automate that and make it easier for them, we did. Next is targeted fundraising coaching messages. And this is probably, as you mentioned too, the scheduled notifications and trigger notifications in DonorDrive. Both Betsy and I, our programs are on the DonorDrive platform. And they have made it so incredibly easy for us to create messaging that can go out to our participants. It is probably the best feature as a fundraiser I've ever been able to work with. And we worked with Mandy O'Neill of Connected Nonprofits to build a full-on email campaign, notification campaign to reach out to our participants. It started out first with a onboarding series. So the day someone registers, obviously they get that "thank you so much for registering," message. But before, that would be the end of it. And then it would be like 2 weeks later, we're like, oh, we should probably send an email out to our team captains and talk about this. Or we should probably, call our team captains again and call everyone at the same time, that sort of thing. The nice thing about the notification system is we were able to build an onboarding series to engage our participants right after they registered. So if we can get them going and we can get them fundraising right from the very beginning instead of letting them sit for a couple weeks, obviously they're going to do more for us. So one day after they register, they get an email, again, thanking them. It's got some mission-based messaging in it, but it says, would you make a self-donation? Would you take that first step and make a self-donation? The second day after, it would be, would you go in and download our mobile app? And all the reasons why fundraising with our mobile app. The third day, it was, would you update your personal page? Would you put a personal picture on it? Would you, consider telling your story on your page because you're going to raise more money if you actually tell people your story instead of, just kind of the stuff that we had written out. The fourth day was sending emails through your participant center and that you raise 2 times more money if you send emails instead of, reaching out other ways. And then the last day was doubling your donations by considering matching gifts in all the places that you can go for matching gifts. So by the time they had been, with us for a week, we had communicated with them on different ways that they could be successful in their fundraising. And we did track the amount of money that was raised the year before in the first 5 days after somebody registered versus the amount of money that was raised in the first 5 days they registered in 2017, excuse me. And on average, our participants raised 40% more money in the first 5 days after they registered than they had in the past. So we knew that onboarding series was working greatly. We are also able to target directly to different participant groups. So you can directly communicate to team captains and say, this, and this is all automated at kind of the push of a button, which is what's so wonderful about it. You can communicate just to your participants who have raised less than $50. You can communicate just to your participants who, have raised over $5,000. So you really could kind of make that communication much more targeted, which I think also does a lot for a participant. If I know that you're paying attention to me and you're kind of talking again, to me instead of at me, it makes them want to do more. It makes them feel more engaged, that you're really paying attention to what they're doing. The third thing we did is team outreach chair training. So how many people in here use volunteers to be making phone calls, outreach, doing that stuff to help you out, kind of as an extension of your staff? If you're not, you really should be. Honestly, our volunteers can tell a story unlike any of us. I do not have a child with a bleeding disorder, and most, many of our chapters, have staff that don't have, a personal connection. But our volunteers, for the most part, all do have a personal connection. So we went through and targeted in most of our chapters, finding 1 or 2 volunteers, the right volunteer, somebody that could be an outreach of your staff, be reaching out to your participants, and really kind of telling their story, asking their story. We weren't always looking for the greatest fundraiser. We didn't necessarily want the team that raises $10,000 or $15,000 because not everyone feels like they can do that. It can be really intimidating. So we really focused on finding team captains that had been successful but not crazy successful. They were, they raised $1,000 or they raised $2,000. People who are very personable. And we trained them. We kind of taught them exactly how to do this outreach and how to gather the information that would help our participants raise more money in essence. And so we deployed this group of volunteers to be doing outreach on behalf of our staff, which really helped. But we had to obviously train them on all the tools that were available, everything they needed to do in order to be able to do that. The fourth is team coaching materials. And I said before, we had kind of done a lot of automated stuff with team coaching, but we also had to build out new team coaching packets, checklists, everything that they really needed, timelines. As a team captain, 1 week after you register, you should be doing this. As a team captain, 3 weeks before the walk, you should be doing this. So we built out some great materials that would make it really easy for a team captain to be successful. Again, that's another place where we added a lot of the sample emails, the sample messaging, everything to make it easier for them. The next is we were able to do targeted messaging directly to $0 fundraisers, starting about 15 days out from the walk. The messages were very mission focused. They had told the story of, Tommy, who was diagnosed at birth, or they told the story of this, adult male who, fears every day that he'll have a child with, hemophilia or with a bleeding disorder. So it really told the story of why, you're coming out to our event. We're so thankful that you've, made the chance or choice to join us. However, what we really need from you is for you to consider making a $25 donation. And it's exactly the level that we asked for was $25. We did that. We piloted this in a couple of our walks, and we sent messages at 15, 10, 7, 3, and then 1 day out was a real sort of slightly heavier one. That said, we have a goal of raising $10,000 today, from our participants who have not yet started to fundraise. And we're asking you to, in whatever the chapter wanted to target, whether that was emergency assistance or their camp. And in 3 cases, we raised over $10,000 in 1 day just from participants who had not yet started fundraising 24 hours before the walk. And then the last thing we did is how-to videos. Not only are our staff small, they're usually 1 to 1.5 to 2 people. In most cases, they aren't sitting at their desk just waiting for the phone to ring for a participant to ask questions. And when they do, there's a lot of time, a lag between when the participant called and when staff could actually get back to them. And so we built out a series of 8 videos that are short 3-minute videos, roughly around 3 minutes. The first is how to register and make a self-donation. So the chapters could actually, post these little snippets not only on social media, but they could, be sending them out to lapsed team captains who have not yet, registered for this year. Anywhere you could go with that video to kind of encourage people. And like I said, it didn't just say how to register. The first video was how to register and make a self-donation. But we also had several other videos that we could use to target specific participants. So we could pull lists very easily through the event insights on DonorDrive and see what participants had not yet sent a email, and we could just target those participants and send them the link to the YouTube video on how to send emails through your participant center. Same with how to download the mobile app. Same with how to update your picture, or how to add your checks that are sitting at home and you haven't quite sent in to the office yet. So those emails sit not only on our website under a fundraising section, or those videos, excuse me, but we also worked really hard with the chapters to get them to target specific groups and send those specific videos out directly to people. We actually did it in a targeted sense last year. Most of those messages were not quite ready until September. Last year we just did certain things and we targeted just one thing at a time. but easily, I mean, the nice thing is that you can easily pull a report and sort by that and upload, just that email list into the email section and send an email, based on those 3 things. But I'm kind of the mindset of let's not overwhelm. If they haven't done anything, let's just try them to do one thing. If they do one thing, they're more likely to do a second. But we started by just targeting usually to get them to do one thing only. And then if they did it, then we would push them further. And we expanded those videos this year, and we actually honestly decided that works so good for us that we have chapters calling us all the time saying, how do I do this on the back end of DonorDrive? So we went so far as to record a series of videos to send to our chapters on, here is how you add a sponsor, here is how you, because they work so well on the front end. So hopefully my phone's rings a little bit less because we have the videos as well. So like I said, last year we went from a 31% activation rate, and this year our goal is to get up to 45, and I'm hoping by setting an only 5% goal, we get all the way to 50, like we did last year, jumping by about 10%. This is just other fun ideas. We wanted to talk about how you guys could, tailor something specifically to you and have some fun with it. A lot of times, fundraising can be scary, as Betsy said, make some fun. And so these are just some cool samples of other fun things, and we want to ask you guys some other fun things that you guys have done that you can share. But over here is the San Diego 3-day bingo, and that is from one of the vice presidents at the Susan G. Komen, who's a friend of mine, and she had posted this on Facebook, and I thought it was so great. And it's really about donate, and you can pick a square on this board to, kind of be. It's hard for you to read them, but one of them is like. A flat U photo will be with me at, mile 36 if you donate $50, or I'll take a selfie, with a guy with a bra on his head, if you pay me $30, or, that kind of thing. So they just it was a great idea. It made it really fun. It made it really easy for her to fundraise and to make money. The other one is a sample that I had seen from the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which is kind of similar, like find a friend, you're a friend from high school, and donate, $10, those kinds of things. So, just a way to put a little bit of fun into it. And I know you guys had some fun stuff.
Yeah. We utilized a triggered notification so that throughout the season, I believe it's somewhere around week maybe 12 or 13, we have a triggered notification go out to anybody who hadn't raised any money yet, and it kind of prompted them, inspired them, encouraged them, reminded them why they signed up for this race in the first place, but also pointed them to our fundraising resources. So we have a full page on our website through DonorDrive of fundraising resources, and we try to make them fun and creative. And one thing we came up with is called the What Kind of Fundraiser quiz. What kind of fundraiser are you quiz? So we actually came up with about 10 different caricatures, and we had an illustrator draw them out for us, and we have one that's the nervous Nelly, and if you're the nervous Nelly, then you're terrified to ask people for money, and you don't like confrontation, so here are some ideas for you, nervous Nelly, ways that you can email people, and ways that are a little more subtle and gentle, and you won't feel as rejected. And then there's the party animal, and the party animal is the person who loves to host parties and loves to bring people together and gather people, and they're the outgoing one. So if you take the little quiz and it populates that you're the party animal fundraiser type, then here's some specific ideas for you. So that's just one example of a fun tool that we provide for our participants.
And so the other thing that we really wanted to talk about, and I think it's funny because it kind of came up in the opening session as well, is really using your data to kind of drive your decisions. A lot of us get overwhelmed and we're not necessarily sure what to do next. We know that we have lots of people who haven't fundraised, or we know of a team that raised $500 but they haven't raised any money in the last 6 weeks, and how do we get them back moving, that kind of thing. And this is going to sound like a shameless plug, but it's not. But Betsy and I both use DonorDrive, and one of the great things we're able to use with DonorDrive is their event insights section, and it's kind of a glimpse. It's a snapshot. It's sort of hard to see on here, but it's a snapshot that basically tells you like exactly what has happened in the last 7 days, how many, day by day, how many people have registered, how many people, you could click on that button and it'll tell you the exact 5 people who registered the last couple of days. So you're able to really go in and target. And so that's really how we train our people to use, or to make decisions on what they should do next. Kind of look at what your participants are doing. If your walk is 63 days out and you have, 1,400 people registered, but only 145 have raised money, you know that you really need to be pushing it hard on, you can kind of, maybe stop the recruitment aspect of it and move into the engagement aspect of it. So there's a lot of great tools. So no matter what system you use, really, looking at your data and figuring out how to use your data to drive kind of the decisions that you're going to make next. And then whether it is, for us to within DonorDrive, this notification side, whatever, whatever system you guys use, making sure that you're really taking advantage of those, tools that they provide to you to be reaching out to people, and rewarding them and thanking them and, that kind of thing throughout the process.
Yeah, to touch on that too, we have such a unique season since, like I mentioned, we have teams that run the LA Marathon and the Chicago Marathon, and they're all throughout different times of the year. So we used to have each of our staff members in their given city send emails to their team via Outlook, and that just got completely overwhelming, and there are typos and things don't translate and the images don't work well. And so when we started using the automated emails, that was such a powerful tool for us. And we joke because people in a given city will go up to that staff person and say, "Josh, I got your email and it encouraged me so much. It was week 7 and I felt injured, and right in the email you said, 'Are you feeling injured? Here are some great stretching tips, and if you're injured, it's okay, and this is how to get through an injury, and it's okay if you get set back in your training.'" And it wasn't Josh that wrote the email, it was our experience team and our marketing team. But the fact that as our program grew, we wanted to maintain that personal aspect that felt really personal. It felt like it was coming from their team captain and their team leader, and not from just this nameless organization or this nameless, email coming out from the organization hub. So that was another thing that's been really valuable. We always try to keep that personal touch point. Oh yeah, so I want to make sure we have time for questions. Is there only about 5 minutes left?
About 10.
Okay, I'll play this quick video. So this is just to illustrate the fact that, as I've mentioned a couple times, we try to, throughout the culture of our program, always be reminding the people who have signed up to join our team. We know they didn't sign up to raise $0. At some point, they had a moment of inspiration where they were inspired to join the team. They were inspired to make a difference through running a race. They didn't sign up to raise $0, to be a goose egg. So we try to remind them of that moment when they said yes. And our team specifically has sort of developed a culture around the word yes and saying yes. So this is just an example of a video of how we do
that. In 2006, one man heard a divine whisper that he could help the most vulnerable kids in the world by running marathons. So he said yes. He felt God ask him to invite others into the same vision, so he did. Many people felt scared of the unknown, anxious and doubtful that they could accomplish such a big goal. For some of them, fear prevailed, and they said no. But many people pushed through that fear, and they said yes. The first year, 100 people said yes. The next year, 400 said yes. Then 1,000, then 2,000. And a funny thing started to happen. As people said yes to new challenges, and to changing the lives of kids and communities in Africa, their own lives started to change in drastic ways.
I started this year. This is my first year. I have only been out of a wheelchair for 2 years now.
In the beginning, I was like, my knees, I got too much weight, hold on. But I stuck with it.
When I first was introduced to Team World Vision, I was a smoker, and I knew I needed to quit. But that instantly was in my mind, like, oh, I can't do it.
But I did know that I wanted to prove to myself that I could do something athletic, because I was always told that I'd never be good at anything that's athletic. So when I heard about World Vision, I was like, hey, why not give it a try? And plus the goal of like bringing clean water, that's beautiful. So I was like, this is something I really want to do.
And I just went all in. I thought, I'm 55, why not? Bev did it at 60, I'll do it at 55.
We really did a lot of training, just the two of us, and it was such a bonding moment of that time when your strength is faltering and the person next to you carries you through it.
Well, I've lost 75 pounds through this, which is, my doctor is ecstatic.
I used to do world missions back in my 20s, a lot of relief mission work overseas, and then got in my 30s and kind of fell away from the Lord, fell away from that, fell away from the commitment and thinking about people overseas, and this has really brought me back, helped me recommit my life to the Lord, but also to those less fortunate. So it's been very good for me.
And I couldn't imagine my 7-year-old having to go run and get water for our family. So that keeps me motivated and focused.
I plan on running a marathon every single year until I die. Wow. We'll see how that happens or how that goes.
Over the last 10 years, over 25,000 people have joined Team World Vision, and they just keep saying that magic word, yes. Every one of those yeses also represents kids in Africa who get to say yes to life, yes to health, yes to an education, yes to hope. Hundreds of thousands of kids. When we continually saying yes to the whisper, we say yes to personal transformation and yes to hope and life for kids. Every movement, every revival, every revolution in the history of mankind has begun because someone said yes. They are yes people. We are yes people. You are one too. As long as there are children in this world without clean water, we will continue saying yes.
So, thanks. So that's just an example of how we try to remind. There was a moment of inspiration that they said yes. That makes them a yes person. We want them to stay a yes person. But overall, just finding ways through video, through email, through communications that reminds them why they said yes.